So, awesome. I think we're live. So, I'm back, Facebook Live, after a hiatus. For a while there, Facebook had changed their format, and so hold on here, still messing with a few technical things. Okay. So yeah, I wasn't able to do the Facebook Lives for a while. And so, but we've sorted out the technical issues, so I'm back. Going to be doing the Facebook Lives again. Looking forward to that. But today, my first Facebook Live, I want to talk about something that is probably a little off subject for mountain bike strength training, and I wanted to touch on some lessons, some takeaways that I think that we can learn from a recent run-in that saw a rider actually get stabbed by a hiker. Okay, I read this story on Pink Bike yesterday. I'm sure it's made the rounds in different media sources. But, you know, first you see this and you're like, holy crap, right? Like a rider getting stabbed by a hiker, like that's about as extreme as it can get. But, you know, then you look at the situation, you say, okay, is there some things that I can learn from the situation, right? Like that's always the best thing to do. And so one, like, you know, I wasn't there, right? I read some of the accounts of what happened. I'm not here to say, you know, who was right, who was wrong. You know, usually you've got the two sides of the story and the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and there's never any excuse for someone to stab someone on the trail, okay? So this is not passing judgment in any way on what happened with the rider, that he was at fault in any way or anything like that. But again, as a rider, can we look at this situation and say, man, if we encountered something similar, you know, what can we take away from it? And so the first lesson, I think, or takeaway that we can have from this is to don't escalate situations, right? Like, so again, I'm not casting judgment. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. But I do know that it's very, you know, it's more apparent in today's, we'll say, you know, society, just kind of where everyone's at, that people are on edge, okay? And so it's a little easier for people to overreact to situations and get violent. But the reality is that even when it's not, you know, kind of a common thing like it is today, society is a thin veneer as far as like a protection from violence. And so you need to be able to recognize potential violence and then be able to deal with it, right? And so again, like on the trail, it's a little bit of an extreme example, but even in our everyday lives, this is something that will serve you well to understand how to recognize and manage potential violence. And rule number one, right? So I teach jiu-jitsu and I teach kids and even the adults, right? When we're talking about self-defense, I tell them, what is the point of a fight? Okay, what is the goal of a fight? And, you know, some people inevitably raise their hand and say, oh, the goal of a fight is to win the fight, right? And it's like, no, right? I'm talking about a fight, right? Not a match, a competition or something, but a fight. And the goal of a fight, I feel, is to not lose the fight, right? That's the point. It's not to win. It's to not lose the fight. And maybe that takes winning the fight, like decisively, in order to not lose. But the point, you know, can I lose a fight that I wasn't in? No, right? So if my goal is to not lose the fight, then every fight that I avoid, I've accomplished my goal. All right, and so if you approach things with that mindset, then it's going to be less likely that you're going to get into any sort of like macho, you know, like two dogs barking at each other sort of situation with another person. And again, just when looking at violence, like even when we do encounter violence, we usually encounter what's known as social violence, okay, where it's just two people. Again, the thing about the two dogs barking at each other, it's not a big deal. You know, nobody really wants to kill each other. No one really wants to maim each other. It's just a pecking order thing, and it's not that big a deal, right? Like think about two guys at the bar, even like, you know, bump into each other and and they duke it out for a minute, and then they're, you know, buying each other drinks, right? Like that's social violence, okay? There's asocial violence as well, and this is where things are like, hey, I don't care about the social hierarchy. I'm not worried about this. I'm trying to destroy something. And so this is where you end up in a violent encounter with someone who's got a deadly force weapon. Okay, and this is another type of violence. And again, luckily, we live in a society where this is not something that we have to deal with on a regular basis. Okay, and so, but we're shielded from it, right? And so we don't think about it. We don't think about the fact that, man, we may run into a situation where it can go from a social violence situation to an asocial violence situation. And most people don't even really understand that distinction. Until I was exposed to it, I really didn't understand as well. I think instinctively we all know that, right? Okay, there is definitely a difference between, like I said, like two guys at a bar duking it out and then buying rounds for each other afterwards, and like someone trying to stab each other, right? Like that, the two different things, right? And that's what it is. And so what you don't want to do is find yourself in an asocial violence situation, because that means that you may have to do something drastic to defend your life. Don't put yourself in that kind of situation, right? Don't escalate any situation. It doesn't matter who's right, who's wrong, who's calling whose mama or what. It doesn't matter, right? Like you don't escalate it. You walk away from the situation if possible. And also being able to recognize, like, when are things starting to escalate on another person's level, right? Like when are they starting to get to the point where they may start looking at using violence as a tool, as a way to manage this situation? And being able to recognize these cues, just having situational awareness, really, that is a form of situational awareness. Just like not walking down a dark alley at night when you see some questionable looking characters down there in an area of town that is known for people getting mugged, right? Like that would be ill-advised. You just want to have situational awareness to avoid things like that. But beyond that, you need to be able to recognize when, on an individual level, someone else may be ratcheting up to a level where they're starting to think about violence as a tool that they want to use. And then you need to actively de-escalate the situation. Again, I'm not casting judgment. I don't know what happened. That may be what happened with this rider. But I don't think that most people think about this, in their daily life. Again, this is something that you need to be thinking about on a daily basis, right, as part of your daily life. But again, just if the unique situation appears on the trail, I don't believe that most riders are really prepared mentally with how to deal with that situation, or recognize that things may be going south and that they need to actively start trying to de-escalate the situation so it doesn't get pushed into something that turns into something they weren't prepared for. Right? And so, again, there's never any excuse for someone to act that way, right? I'm not excusing someone's behavior. But the point is you can be right and end up, really hurt and maimed, or you can just let it go and walk away from the situation, right? So there's something to be said for just understanding that when you enter a situation to have that attitude of like, man, I don't want to lose a fight, and so I'm trying to avoid every fight I can possibly avoid, because that's what accomplishes my situation. And if I've got the right of way, or this person's being a dick, and it'd be really easy for him to just move over and get out of my way, but he doesn't want to. There's no reason to push it. And again, I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just saying that we can avoid potential future situations like this if we understand how to approach that. Now, the second thing is to have medical supplies. And this is something, again, like I'm really surprised that isn't talked about more in the mountain biking world, because we participate in a very dangerous activity. Now, obviously, getting stabbed on the trail is an extreme thing, but being able to deal with traumatic bleeding is something that you should be able to do. Because even beyond getting stabbed, right, like that's pretty extreme, like I said. You can fall and puncture yourself on a sharp stick, or really gash something open on a rock. So there's, I once knew a guy who punctured his femoral artery with his handlebar. He was riding and it washed on him, and he hit his leg, and it happened to hit it just right, and he punctured his femoral artery on his handlebar. Now, luckily, he was just like a couple hundred feet away from the parking lot, and he was able to get help. But it wasn't because someone there had medical supplies. No one had a tourniquet. No one had the supplies needed to help him. And luckily, this rider who got stabbed, he was able to get home, get to a hospital, get help. But it may have been a very different, tragic situation. This guy could have very easily bled out on the mountain there before he could have got to help, or help could have got to him. And it can be, in a lot of cases, avoided with some simple tools. So even just starting with something as basic as a tourniquet. All right, you got two different kinds of tourniquets here. There's several different quality types of tourniquets. This is a CATS, a combat application tourniquet. This is a RATS, a rapid application tourniquet. They're both effective, cost about $25. They can save a person's life. It could be yours, it could be someone else's, right? Like, what would you do if you came across someone who was bleeding on the trail, right? So having the ability, just the basic ability to stop severe bleeding. And again, no one's trying to play emergency room doctor here. Like that's not what we're looking for. All we're talking about is being able to stabilize someone long enough so that they can get to help or help can get to them, and then the experts can do their job. But if they bleed out before that happens, then that can't happen. So something as simple as a tourniquet, you can upgrade that. Like, in my hip pouch, in my Camelback, I carry a tourniquet, I've got a compression bandage, I've got some quick clot, I've got a triangular bandage. Like, I've got the basic items that you would need to help stabilize someone who had severe bleeding. And, again, it's just basic preparedness. Like it may be you, it may be someone else. And again, I'm not getting stabbed is an extreme situation, but like I said, I know someone who stabbed himself with his handlebar. And so it can and it does happen. And so having these tools, again, something as lightweight and as small as a rat's tourniquet is super easy to add to your ride kit. And again, it makes you more prepared for weird situations that may occur. So again, these like when I read that story, like again, first reaction is like, holy crap, that's a crazy story. But again, started to look at some takeaways, and I thought that it would be some good takeaways to share with you guys, because again, this is something definitely outside the realm of the normal area for mountain bike training and mountain biking in general. But I think it's something that us as riders, man, we really need to think about more, especially the medical side of things and being prepared for the medical side. And so it's something that I'm going to be addressing more, with future posts and things like that as well. So, but anyways, just some things to think about. Yeah, cool. All right. So see if we had any posts or anything like that, any comments. So we did not have anything at the moment. So anyways, yeah, as always, you guys got any questions or comments on this, you can hit me up at james@bikejames.com. Post a comment here, and I will be happy to get to it. But yeah, you can find out more. There's a great website called Mountain Man Medical that sells medical supplies, and they also have a free video series that takes you through the basic algorithm for how to help someone who has suffered a traumatic injury, and just again help stabilize them until the real help can get there. But that can be a super important part of the process of getting them help. So anyways, that's gonna do it for now. I'm gonna go ahead and end this bad boy, and I will talk to everybody next time.